Hey guys, welcome back to Starving Artist Phoenix. I'm Tony Machete. Got kind of a special bonus episode for you today. So we got Starving Artists Abroad, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, we'll think of something good. But basically, I just had the opportunity to interview a hypnotherapist who doesn't actually live around town. I actually met him through a really cool app, Simbi, which you probably heard me or my wife talk about on Facebook if you know us personally. But basically, yeah, he was a really cool guy, and got a chance to interview him a little bit. And I definitely thought it was worth putting on the podcast, because anytime I meet somebody interesting, I feel like you guys might think they're interesting too. So, really interesting guy, really kind of cool background, cool story. He had some interesting difficulties in his life that he overcame, and really took a curve in his life that he didn't expect. And who can't relate to that? So, let me know what you think of my interview with hypnotherapist Melvin Marsh.
Surface of the sun. Don't know how it got here, but know that it was fun. Know that it was worth it. I would never be here if I could. Don't you know the desert air makes the brain feel good? I can't stand the rain, so I'll stay out in the sun till I'm insane.
And I'm like, Corky, you cannot win this battle, my friend.
It's just not gonna happen. Well, okay, so let's just jump right into your professional background. So, one thing that caught my eye when I was reading your biography is that you were already toying around with hypnosis when you were younger. So, how was your first exposure to it? How did you first decide to dabble?
When I was dabbling, well, I first got exposed to biofeedback, and I just happened to read it in these occult magazines and stuff, these books, and I knew of hypnosis from movies. Like, I really liked The Jungle Book, and I loved Ka. Okay, and I was like, at first when I talked to my hypnotherapist, I was like, just don't make your eyes do this. I think we're going to be fine. And I watched another movie that I really loved, Charlie Chan.
Okay,
those Meeting at Midnight, and there's an evil hypnotist in there. It didn't dawn on me that this was a thing, that this was like a real thing. But I did get exposed to biofeedback when I was a youngin.
So what separates biofeedback from traditional hypnosis?
Well, biofeedback, you as the person, you're just literally learning how to control, like your blood pressure or whatnot. You don't have to. I mean, it is a hypnotist can learn biofeedback. That's not a problem. It is usually a form of self-hypnosis. You don't know that. You don't really notice that when you're doing it. Your job is to sit there and just play a game with yourself, which really sounds really bad when you're playing with yourself. But that's what you're doing, and you're playing with this thing. Trying to get your heart rate to go up, yay, or heart rate to go down, yay. So it's one of those things.
So is it the same kind of principle that you used later on when you were doing like pain management? Like I noticed you basically put yourself under for your own root canals, for childbirth even.
Yep. That helped.
Interesting. Because,
you do get really good control over things like your body, your nerves. That's something that you learn. And when I learned, look, labor is really no big deal. Just chill. You'll be fine. I was at home. I see those eyes. I was at home. I already knew to not really worry. I literally did statistics homework for like 6.5 hours during labor. Didn't actually tell my mother or tell my grandmother who was there. My mother wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And my husband, I didn't tell them because I didn't want to bother them until he got dressed to go to work. And I said, "Where are you going?" And he's like, "To work." I said, "I thought you wanted to be present when your daughter was born."
Oh my goodness.
This is how I announced that to him. My grandmother's eyes got, and I handed up the thing where I've been keeping track of the contractions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm that guy. I like being a surprise.
You got to have a little moment with it.
Yeah, I that was fun. My grandmother to this day does not believe I went into labor at 1 o'clock. She will swear I went into labor at like 7. I was literally sitting next to her doing statistics homework because I'm crazy apparently. But I went through and I was like completely relaxed. Okay, the only real issue I had was I did do a root canal, and I used the principle of biofeedback. So when they go after my arm for a needle, I basically tone all the pain receptors down.
Interesting. And you can just kind of single that out like that.
Yeah, it was like, okay, this is where they're going. I was like, I might as well shut down from the arm, from the shoulder down, and I can do that. So it makes it much easier on the nurses that are trying to stick me. So when they were doing the root canal, this guy decided he did not want to give me pain medication, to numb my mouth. That should have been my first clue that this guy was on crack. So I'm starting to freak out, and I'm trying to go through my mouth, trying to find out which nerve goes to the spot where he's going to be working on. And I'm like, nope, that didn't do it. Nope, that didn't do it. That one. Wait, bingo, got it. And then I localized the numbness.
Wow. So just a race against time as he was doing it.
It really was, because that was a kind of a scary situation. And he didn't give me any pain medications afterwards, so that was equally as fun. Now, the pain management thing did get back to me once in a very negative way. My gallbladder exploded.
Oh my gosh.
It didn't go bad, it exploded. I was walking around for 3 weeks with apparently no gallbladder, but being in pain.
Sure.
Some of it, I should have been dead, apparently, according to the ER. Apparently, me having a hypnosis background, yeah, I should not have been walking. Much less driving myself to the ER to say, can you finally figure out what's wrong here?
Wow.
Yeah, I was misdiagnosed by several doctors simply because, well, you'd be ill if it was your gallbladder, you'd have more problems.
Wow. So just because you had more self-control than you should have had, they didn't even think to check. Interesting.
That's the story of my life.
So you've already started kind of developing those skills on your own. You started to kind of use them in practice. When did you start to try hypnotherapy professionally?
That's actually pretty recent, because somebody had told me about almost 2 years ago that I should go into hypnotherapy to deal with my anxiety. I wasn't keen on this idea because I didn't know enough about it. When I went on a leave of absence from medical school, I pursued learning more about it. Ended up getting my own hypnotherapist who started working just absolute wonders. It was awesome. And they, eventually I, started doing more and more education. My therapist ordered my husband. He ordered my husband to pay for Hypnosis Motivation Institute's advanced training. Okay. I looked at my therapist. I was like, are you kidding me? And because we hadn't talked about this before. I was like, that would be nice to have, but I wasn't expecting it.
So they just saw the potential in you, basically, and just went with that.
They said, you really like this, and you need a plan B in case medical school doesn't work out.
Interesting.
And my hypnotherapist thought, it was like, he was willing to have that discussion, too, because he's like, he loves me because he and I both have the same style as far as hypnosis goes. He's an Ericksonian, and the Ericksonian modality is one of my favorites. So we could at least discuss that.
Yeah. So can you elaborate on that a little bit for potential newcomers to the field?
The newcomers to the field for what's Ericksonian?
Ericksonian, yeah.
Okay. Well, Dr. Erickson he actually passed away in 1980, but he is actually one of the most famous hypnotherapists in the of the 20th century. He was actually an MD. He had a degree. He was a psychiatrist, and he just really appreciated self-hypnosis because he'd been doing that since he was young. He actually took he had polio. This was back way before the viruses or anything else, the vaccines. He had polio. He was told that he might not live to see another day at one point. And not only did he live to see another day, he was completely paralyzed except for I think he could move his eyes. And he had to learn how to move again. So he watched I think it was his sister or something, learn to walk, and he relearned how to walk and function. And it's basically, amazing what he did. Man must have been the most observant man on the face of the planet. But one of the things he did with hypnotherapy, as opposed to some of the stage hypnotists would say, hey, you can't be hypnotized. Because they most people are not going to take a really direct suggestion. Mm-hmm. Erickson was very, very indirect. He was incredibly permissive. He was just, basically everything the stage people were not. And he found out that basically everyone can go into trance. That trance was a very natural occurrence. And he was able to make changes in his patients really quickly. And nobody's really sure how he was doing this. But he basically got the patients, or whatever you would like to say, they came up with their own resources just by listening to him tell a story.
So it's all about kind of subverting that natural wall that people put up. They're like, I'm not going to be hypnotized. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if you wanted to fight him, he would just embrace that resistance, and okay, and he'd still get you. He'd still get you at the end. So he's kind of like my a little bit of a hero because that's pretty amazing to do, and he has got a huge following. You can always tell the Ericksonians because first of all, a lot of them have an obsession with the color purple, like me. Actually, I had a purple obsession way before he did. Before I knew about him, But there's actually a color Ericksonian purple because he wore purple all the time. Wow. And he has a massive following. Some people like Dave Ellman, which is more like straight and stage. I don't care if he says he's a hypnotherapist. He's not doing that much therapy. Give me an Ericksonian anytime. They're hilarious.
No, going off that too, and you brought up something that I wanted to ask about as it is. So you mentioned specifically that he was an MD, and you say that in a tone that I feel like you expect shock and surprise when people hear that. And just like you yourself, you were a medical student before transitioning into hypnotherapy. Do you feel like there's kind of a stigma with alternative health, things like this?
There's a huge stigma with alternative health. People will sit there and, for the most part, first of all, they'll argue with you over what you do, which is always hilarious. Because I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I know what I do because I was trained for it. No, I'm not going to sit there and do this, that, or the other. What you're watching in the movies, I know this is difficult to imagine, but it's fake. I mean, did you know that movies are fake?
I've heard rumors, but okay. I don't know. They're real people, so who knows?
I know, but I mean, everybody's absolutely paranoid. And every time a movie with a hypnotist comes out, all hell breaks loose. When Get Out came out, haha. And I say, oh, I'm a hypnotherapist. Everybody froze and just stared at me as though I had grown a second head. and then they're like, "Oh, great! Did you see Get Out?" You know, I was like, "I've heard of Get Out. I don't need to watch Get Out. You know, I'm not doing anything dangerous to you. The odds of me taking your mind and transporting it and putting it in a different body is pretty low."
I feel like if that were something that just any hypnotherapist off the street could do, that'd be happening every single day.
This is
Why
true.
not?
I was like, I can numb your pain before surgery.
Yeah.
I have that certification. I cannot move your mind. If I could move somebody's mind, I would not be in the body of a 5'3" gay transsexual Orthodox Jew.
That's fair to say.
I would taller. I'd be taller. Because trying to find clothes that fit me are ridiculous.
Well,
Okay, ain't nobody got time for that.
well, so I mean, that's. Do you feel like that kind of plays into your physical, your professional persona at all? Just the idea that you had to deal with what sounds like some stigmas in the past too, from being a gay transgender. I know I'm awful. I'm gonna cut that out in post. But okay, transgender Orthodox Jew.
The fact is that people hate me regardless of anything. At a certain point, me fitting into the medical, school, they hated me because I was a gay transsexual Orthodox Jew, and I live in the South. There was no way that I was going to actually be allowed to graduate. Period. And they did it because it made them look good, and then I made damn well sure that I was not going to be allowed to continue. So at this point, what else? Okay, you expect a hypnotherapist to be kind of odd. So fine, I'm a gay transsexual Orthodox Jew. Okay.
Take it as a package, right?
And it was like, and now I live in a really goofy house, so that works out, and I'm gonna have a goofy job.
And I would almost say that, at least from an outsider's perspective, that's something that could potentially just put a client at ease a little more. Just the idea of like, yeah, you're just this whole kind of interesting character. There's so many different layers to you. I feel like it makes you more of a developed kind of person in their life. It might set me at ease.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's how it comes out. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure it always does come out like that. But at least I can say, yeah, I can work with that. Yeah, I can work with that. Oh, if you're looking for somebody who's LGBT friendly, yeah, not a problem. Oh, you need somebody who's used to being a religious, minority? Mm-hmm. Well, come on down. Matter of fact, you can blame me for random things. I don't care. Provided you're paying me my money, I don't care. You can spend the entire $150 per hour blaming at me for being a Jew. I don't care because I'm getting $150. I can hypnotize you into getting your relaxation, increased. But provided you're not actively threatening me, I don't care. Besides, I'm an EMT. I can protect myself if necessary.
Excellent. So yeah, you seem to have quite a few different kind of credentials behind you. You've collected in the past.
You could say that, and I still want to collect even more in the future.
Well, I noticed that your undergraduate was biological science, right? And then your
it was anthropology and human biology.
Anthropology.
And I had a second major in medieval Renaissance studies, because why not? I'm a Rennie, so it happens. Have a minor in theater, a minor in history, because that came with the other one.
Sure.
And I almost finished minors in 3 other fields.
Oh my gosh.
Until Emory University is like, dude, you've got to leave, man. You've just got to leave. Then my master's is in space studies, which is like astronomy, but without the math.
Right, yeah, I was going to say, you took all those different fields and you thought, I'm going to do something different. And you got a graduate degree in, it was aeronautical psychology? I apologize.
Yeah, It was space studies. I focused in aerospace psychology and aerospace medicine.
Yeah. So where did that interest come from? And how do you feel like that kind of adheres to your current life?
Well, I'll tell you that I was born with a microscope in one hand and a telescope in the other, which made for a very difficult birth for my mother. So I was exposed to science as an early age, especially astronomy. One of my earliest vacations that I remember was I was in a stroller, a stroller, and I went to the Marshall Space Flight Center, and I remember it very, very clearly because I was already very into space as a 3-year-old, because it's me. And so the astronomy thing was always an interest of mine. Sometimes I wanted to be a rocket scientist. I wanted to be an astronaut at one point. I wanted to be an astrophysicist, because I wanted to study black holes. But it kept being, nobody would ever let me put me in the right position where I actually could go and take that major. Finally, with space studies, which honestly, I looked at it and I accidentally mistyped space.com as space.edu. Go to space.edu and you're going to have University of North Dakota Space Studies. And I was like, what is this? And so when I was applying to graduate school, my advisor wanted me to go and get a PhD in anthropology because I really, really liked it. And I wanted to always be prepared in case I didn't get in. And he wouldn't write me for a master's in anthro. He's like, you're too good for that. And I said, can I apply for a master's in something else entirely? And he's like, well, what? I said, well, there's always space studies. And he was like, what? And I showed him the thing, and he just started laughing. And he's like, sure, I'll write you a letter of recommendation for this program. But if you go get into a PhD program, you're going to that program. I said, of course. I just want to have a backup plan. And I didn't get into those PhD programs, so I went to get a master's in space studies, where I continued working on basically psychological stress. When I was in undergrad, I did a lot of stress work, biocultural stress work, really. And there was also a stress situation. My thesis was identification of psychological stressors, amongst astronauts and cosmonauts. So, stress everywhere. And now as a hypnotherapist, I can finally learn how to get rid of stress.
Do you feel like that helps you in your current profession, just being able to spend so much time analyzing the sources of stress and all the different stresses and all their forms?
Well, I think all this discussion about all my undergraduate degrees basically allowed me to be able to talk about almost anything to almost any person, which helps relieve their stress and builds rapport. Plus, I also did get publications out about stress, and if anybody can say that they are actually a stress expert, it would be me, the undergraduate work that was in stress, the graduate work that was in stress, my publications on stress, and now I'm a hypnotherapist who now can help you get rid of it. So, I'm prepared for anything.
Would you say that's kind of a specialty that you have with your current profession, is focusing on stress-related issues, stress-related anxiety?
That's one of them. One of my things is basically anxiety and stress. That's one of my things. It's very easy to do. It's one of my favorite specialties, simply because when I'm doing the induction for them, I get to do my favorite induction. Well, I always do my favorite induction for first-timers. This time I get to really get into it and really enjoy it. And it helps, but it's a progressive relaxation. Go up, and I just watch all the stress melt from their bodies. And I have never seen such happy people as after you do somebody with high anxiety or stress problem and give them relaxation. They look like they want to propose marriage. And I was like, yep, you're good. You can stay in that recliner a little bit longer. I'm not kicking you out.
So is it difficult then to have to change up the medium, I guess, in which you present these these type of sessions? Like you come to somebody and you can actually watch them face to face, have the stress mist off. But you also mentioned that you can do sessions over Skype.
Mm-hmm.
Is that any different?
It's not as much as you would think. Now, the fact is that right now, you and I are talking on Skype. I can see you. You can see me. Hi! So, basically what would happen if you and I were to do a session, I would say, can you get yourself comfortable? And you'd possibly be sitting there, and I'd be sitting there watching you from, like, your chest up to, and basically try to monitor your trance state over Skype. I'm not a big fan of using the phone unless I really, really know the person, because or I've worked with them in the past, because I can't see them.
Unless indicators you're getting, yeah.
My goal is to be able to see you, especially if I'm doing something like, for example, a past life regression. In which case I want to see any emotion that comes up to your face, because I need to know if you're stressing out or not. If you're stressing out and you're experiencing negative feeling, I want you out of that scene.
Got it. Interesting.
Now, the anxiety people I can usually get even if they're over the phone, just because, it's the same thing. They just relax. I just do it like 40-minute progressive relaxation on them. They're basically, melted butter by the time I'm done with them. So they can't even hold the phone. It's all of a sudden, hi, hey, wake up, wake up. Hello? Okay, fine, I'm going to hang up the phone with you. Bing!
Wow, that's awesome.
So.
Well, okay, we're going for a little bit. There's a couple of things I know I want to ask when we kind of wrap up. For one thing, what is one thing you would want somebody who is experiencing hypnotherapy for the first time to keep in mind? What would you want to tell them before their first session?
I would say, first of all, make sure you trust your therapist. Mm-hmm. Okay. Second of all, if this is a perfectly natural state, there really isn't anything to be terrified of. And I would also be hoping that they really, really vetted their hypnotherapist. You really want a hypnotherapist who has training. And I'm not talking, a weekend's training. There are trainings out there that'll be a week or a weekend, and then they coming out saying, I'm a hypnotherapist. No, you're not. You are a person who has gotten probably, 10 to 20 hours, maybe, in therapy as a hypnotist. You can't learn that much. I went through 300 lecture hours of hypnotherapy training, and then did a 200-hour clinical internship. Huh. That is 500 hours. That's a lot of hours. Okay, and people don't really understand that. They think all hypnotherapists are, kind of created equal. No, they're not. A lot of places will go and they'll get these certifications where you just have to literally fill out a form and they'll certify you. There's no tests. Oh, yeah. There's no proof that you actually are capable. There was this one guy who contacted a whole bunch of certifying agencies for hypnotherapy and filled all of them out as his dog.
Oh my gosh, just to prove that you could just do it.
Yeah, wow. Just to do it. And most of them accepted him.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
So how do you know? I mean, how does somebody who isn't really experienced at all and knowing what's a good school, what's a bad school, like how do they vet somebody?
Well, there is actually only one accredited college of hypnotherapy in the United States.
Interesting.
So that's Hypnosis Motivation Institute off in California. So if that comes up, they've gotten an education. Okay. There's another school that has like this weird concentration in hypnotherapy, but I have met those people, and they're not capable of hypnotizing anybody. Somebody contacted me to try to work with me, and we were going to split my business apart, and and I'd be mentoring. No, this woman did not, or is just not capable of doing anything.
So really, the safest thing to do is just go to Melvin Marsh.
Yeah, basically, it really is. And HMI is a great school.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer more Ericksonian work, but I take what I can get. Another good place to learn, but it's only open to people who are a master's or PhD, is the Ericksonian Foundation. Now, they are the top place here.
Mm-hmm.
It's by far. It's not. There's no comparison. So that's a good place to get trained as well. And I look forward to going back to school, getting another graduate degree, and then I'm going to go to that one too. So I will really have all my bases covered.
Excellent. And you've already touched on it a little bit, but what would you say separates you from other people in your field? Beyond just a credential level.
Well, outside of that, let's see. I am, as far as I can tell, I am one of the only transsexuals who are in this field. There's allegedly one other that taught a class at HMI, but it looks like they're trans, but I'm not 100% sure. And if so, it's male to female as opposed to my direction.
Mm-hmm.
Which I am one of the people who do work with the LGBT community, because they do have a few additional issues.
Sure. That
when you're talking to somebody in hypnosis, like let's just say you're doing inner child work. Well, you have to be very, very careful about what you're saying to somebody who's transgender, for example, doing inner child work. You have to be very, very sensitive. You don't know if this kid is coming out as a boy or a girl at that time. They might not show the gender at all. So it's just eggshells sometimes.
Gotcha. That's
now in my case I can ask very directly, because I'm trans myself, and it's talking to me. The trans community will get together, and you can tell members of the community, because we introduce ourselves a certain way. I'm not telling you, because then you'll try to get in and become a part of us. But we're very, we're easy to tell, and it'll happen immediately. And so if they come to me and we start that that greeting,
password kind of.
yeah, effectively it's this password, and you better have an answer. I'm already going to get into better rapport with them, and we're going to be able to discuss in private some of the stuff that's going on, and it makes me be able to help them better.
Awesome. Well, I can definitely see it already. You're somebody who seems like they are very quick to put somebody in a comfortable position, and I think that I would love to set my my wife up with you on a couple more sessions. I know you talked to her once, I believe, before, but anything that can do to help out with anxiety, it sounds like you're the person to go to.
Oh, it's like, wait, are you Taylor? Or is
Taylor your wife? Has not come up? Yeah, Taylor's my wife.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I came up Taylor. I was like, Taylor was the other person, and then I looked. I was like, are these people? I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah. I mentioned who I was talking to, and she said, "You're talking to Melvin? Oh my gosh!"
I hope she's doing better.
Yeah, she's a peach. Is there any other final thoughts that you want to say for now for this one?
I mean, I'm good. If anybody who ever wants to contact me, afterhourshypnotherapy.com.
Afterhourshypnotherapy.com and afterhourshypnotherapy@gmail.com as well, right?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Melvin. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again soon.
Okay. Thank you. By the way, you being in Phoenix, one of the Ericksonian Foundation is based out of Phoenix.
Really? That's
Yes,
interesting.
Milton Erickson lived in Phoenix.
I'll have to look that up then. That's cool.
Yeah, so
And,
you can actually go. I might actually at some point see you in person because I want my training.
All right, well, drop me a line. We'll go get coffee.
Absolutely, and then I'll try to hypnotize you.
Maybe before the coffee then.
Okay.
All right, take care.
Have fun.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, show your support by checking us out on iTunes, Facebook, Twitter, and Google Play. And if you or someone you know is an artist in the Phoenix area who'd be interested in coming on the podcast, or if you just want to tell us how great we are, write us at starvingartistphx@gmail.com. Again, that's starvingartistphx@gmail.com.